In the headlines, it's not going to be an easy ride for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo during his confirmation hearing today, as he has a number of allegations he needs to clear up. Korea's finance minister plans to continue with the country's easy monetary and fiscal policies this year, saying that structural reforms are more important than raising or slashing interest rates. The U.S. and Germany agreed that a diplomatic solution to the Ukraine crisis would be the best choice, but U.S. President Obama hasn't completely ruled out the option of supplying arms to Ukraine. Newsline at noon begins now. Hello and welcome to the program. It's a cold Tuesday here in Korea, and I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon is over at the National Assembly today, where the confirmation hearing for the nation's Prime Minister nominee, Lee Wan-koo, began this morning.
Yes, but it will be a tough ride for him as he faces a mounting series of allegations against him. Our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won is following the story.
The two-day confirmation hearing for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo got underway at the National Assembly on Tuesday. Lee, the ruling Saenuri Party floor leader up until late last month, began by expressing his regret over a series of allegations against him that have piled up in recent weeks.
As I was preparing for this confirmation hearing, I was once again reminded of how small and problematic I was. I bitterly regret my deficiencies.
The 65-year-old three-term lawmaker is facing a tough road ahead as the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party has urged him to withdraw himself from consideration. That's a turnaround from when the nomination was announced, as it was hailed at first by both parties. The amicable atmosphere changed amid allegations surrounding his past. These range from accusations of real estate speculation to doubts about whether he and his son properly fulfilled their mandatory military service, and a public outcry against his attempts to wield his influence over reporters, behavior that he has since acknowledged as improper. The hearing ends Wednesday, and lawmakers will vote on his nomination on Thursday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And since bouncing back into a position of power in recent days, the new leader of Korea's main opposition party, Moon Jae-in, is being viewed as a potential presidential candidate in 2017. He went up against President Park back in 2012 and lost. But could his more flexible political attitude help him go one step further next time? Well, critics say Moon's new style is disingenuous and just a ploy to win over voters. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
A latest public opinion poll shows the main opposition party's newly elected chairman, Moon Jae-in, is becoming more popular in the public's eyes. According to Real Meter's latest survey, more than 22% of respondents see Moon as a potential presidential candidate in 2017. That's almost 10 percentage points higher than current Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon. In a separate survey, the New Politics Alliance for Democracy's new leader had more popular support than UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who has been mused as a potential candidate since last year. The pollster says Moon's recent visit to the graves of former right-wing presidents Lee Seung-man and Park Chung-hee boosted public sentiment toward him. The unprecedented action by a left-wing leader was received positively across the political divide, with around 60% of ruling party and main opposition party supporters viewing the visit in a positive light. Analysts say Moon has adapted his political views since his defeat to President Park Geun-hye in the 2012 presidential election. Watchers say that Moon's decision to pay respects to the former authoritarian leaders reflected his will to bring about national unity as well as strong national security. He said that when it comes to those matters, it is not about which party is right or wrong. But others evaluate Moon's actions as a strategy to win more supporters, especially as his party is riddled with deep-rooted factionalism. His critics have expressed skepticism, saying they need to see he truly believes in what he is saying and doing. Moon himself has said one of his first tasks is to rid the party of factionalism. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Well, the main opposition party, along with some lawmakers from the ruling party, have been calling President Park Geun-hye's more welfare with no tax hike unrealistic. However, the president is not willing to back down, saying that no new taxes are necessary and that the government can resolve the issue through economic revitalization. Here's our Ji Myung-gil with more.
President Park Geun-hye has voiced her opposition to raising taxes in order to fund welfare programs. She said Monday that economic revitalization is the key to making up for any revenue shortfall for welfare, and that it will also help create jobs and raise tax revenue.
경제 활성화를 위해서 최선을 다하지 않고 이 세수가 부족하니까 뭐 이렇게 국민에게 세금을 더 걷어야 된다 하면은 그것이 우리 그 정치 쪽에서 국민에게 할 수 있는 소리냐.
Since Park's administration came into office in 2013, her government has been dogged by questions about whether it could deliver on a key campaign pledge to provide expensive welfare programs without raising taxes. She has even drawn criticism from her own ruling Saenuri party, which views her stance on the issue as unrealistic. Critics argue that the government is trying to squeeze more money out of ordinary wage earners. In recent months, the government has raised cigarette prices and introduced a revised tax settlement scheme, drawing fire for both from the general public. Adding fuel to the fire, the main opposition party's newly elected chairman, Moon Jae-in, vowed to fight against President Park's policies on his first day in the post.
I will stand against President Park Geun-hye's hidden motives to raise the taxes of ordinary citizens. I will go against plans to limit welfare expansion.
Moon pledged to raise the corporate tax rate and withdraw tax cuts for the rich in order to establish what he described as a fair tax system. The ruling party responded by saying it will gather opinions from inside the party and continue to communicate with the opposition party on tax-related issues. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is weighing various diplomatic factors before deciding whether she will attend a World War II anniversary ceremony in Russia this May. South Korea's unification minister, Ryu Kil-jae, said that current sanctions against Moscow for its involvement in the Ukraine crisis must be taken into consideration. The government also needs to consult with relevant ministries and allies before responding to the invitation. Now, numerous heads of states, including the leaders of both South and North Korea, have been invited to Russia to mark the 70th anniversary of Nazi Germany's defeat in World War II. And Russia has moved to diffuse concerns Kim Jong-un's planned visit to Moscow in May could negatively affect relations between Russia and China. The North Korean leader is expected to travel to Moscow for that event, marking the 70th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany during the Second World War. Russian ambassador to China, Andrei Denisov, says Kim's attendance is natural and logical as Korea fought hard against Japan to be liberated. Now, there have been concerns Beijing would be unhappy with this apparent snub by Kim, as North Korean leaders traditionally travel to China before they visit other countries. Denisov noted that Chinese President Xi Jinping was one of the first guests to RSVP to this event, and the North Korean leader is just one of 20 world leaders that have accepted Moscow's invitation thus far. The ambassador added that Russia and China have common goals in denuclearizing North Korea, maintaining peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, and improving ties with both Koreas. Officials and researchers from Korea and the US will come together in Washington 1 week from this Tuesday to mark the first anniversary of the UN Commission of Inquiry's landmark report on North Korea's human rights record. They are expected to discuss the future for human rights in the North and the North's human rights violations. The list of participating institutions from Korea and the US includes the Center for Strategic and International Studies and Yonsei University. The conference is being held at a time when North Korea is demanding its human rights record be expunged following a defector's recent confession that parts of his story about his experience in a political prison camp were made up.
Korea's finance minister is in Istanbul for the G20 finance ministers meeting. And ahead of the meeting, he said the Korean government will likely maintain its easy monetary and fiscal policies this year. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan says the country's interest rate policy will be locked in for some time as the domestic economy is showing steady recovery and inflation will remain balanced. The minister is in Istanbul, Turkey for the two-day G20 finance ministers meeting that began on Monday local time. He spoke with Reuters ahead of the meeting and said that reforming the Korean economy is considered a more important task than slashing or raising interest rates.
This year's challenge will be risky as the global economy may not be recovering faster than we expected. Low oil prices are absolutely good news for the Korean economy, but it also has various risk factors at the same time. That would be another challenge that we could face this year.
The minister also said the nation's key interest rate is already at a historic low of 2%, unchanged for a third straight month. He said the Korean government has identified labor, education, and the financial and public sectors as the major areas for reform so that the nation can avoid falling into a drawn-out period of sluggish growth. On the global economic front, Choi said the European Central Bank's recent monetary policy could benefit the export-reliant Korean economy as it may drive demand there for exports from Asian countries. The Korean minister also met with his Turkish and Indonesian counterparts and the Secretary General of the OECD and discussed countries' different monetary policies. Choi said the different policies fuel volatility in the global financial market and called on the G20 nations to boost their policy coordination, saying that the countries should work to benefit the global economy, not just their own. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's tax revenue fell short of forecasts for the third straight year in 2014 as the country grapples with a prolonged economic slowdown. The finance ministry says overall tax earnings came in at slightly more than $270 billion, around $10 billion shy of the target. This year's shortfall was the largest on record. The ministry attributes the shortcoming to sluggish corporate tax revenues stemming from companies' weak performances. It also says slumping domestic demand and the strengthening Korean won against the greenback prompted an all fall in value-added taxes and customs duty.
Korea's IT and communications sector enjoyed another strong month in January, with exports jumping 6% from the same month last year on the back of solid memory chip orders. Korea's trade ministry says the country's ICT exports amounted to $14.1 billion in January, setting a new record for the first month of the year. While the key sector managed to keep its trade balance in the black, imports rose at a faster rate of 14% on year in January. Handset exports continue to fall amid intensified competition from Apple and lower-end Chinese manufacturers. Handset imports, on the other hand, soared more than 55%, mostly on rising demand for Apple's new iPhone 6 models. Chinese tourists are visiting Korea in ever larger numbers, especially during the holiday season. The Korea Tourism Organization projects some 126,000 Chinese tourists will visit the country during the week-long Chinese Spring Festival that starts next Wednesday. Now, this would be a 30% increase compared to last year's Chinese Spring Festival. For the whole of last year, more than 6 million Chinese tourists visited Korea, making up well over 40% of the total number of foreign tourists. Because of this, the Culture Ministry says it's preparing to release more leaflets and storybooks about Korea in the Chinese language, as well as some shopping promotion guidebooks. Right, well, let's get a check on the global headlines we're following on this Tuesday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by for us at the News Centre.
So, Eunice, U.S. President Barack Obama has made it clear that he's holding out hope for a diplomatic solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
That's right, June. Washington, of course, has been mulling over the prospect of sending lethal weapons to Ukraine. But with a four-way peace summit just around the corner coming up tomorrow, President Obama said the U.S. would watch how those Minsk talks go. Kim Hyun-bin has the story.
U.S. President Barack Obama says there has been no decision yet on whether to send arms to Ukraine. He said he will wait for the outcome of Wednesday's talks in Belarus between the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany before deciding on whether to send lethal arms to Kiev to help the Ukrainians fight pro-Russian separatists in the east of their country. Wrapping up talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel at the White House on Monday, Obama stressed that diplomacy and sanctions remain the top priority for resolving the crisis.
If, in fact, diplomacy fails, what I've asked my team to do is to look at all options. What other means can we put in place to change Mr. Putin's calculus? And the possibility of lethal defensive weapons is one of those options that's being examined. But I have not made a decision about that yet.
Obama made clear that he could put more pressure on Ukraine by providing arms. However, that could endanger Washington's unity with Europe on the issue. The German leader, who is opposed to sending weapons to Ukraine, urged Obama to think very carefully about his next move.
We continue to pursue a diplomatic solution, although we have suffered a lot of setbacks. These days, we will see whether all sides are ready and willing to come to a negotiated settlement.
The decision on supplying arms to Kiev has been postponed temporarily as Merkel and French President François Hollande are working to find a diplomatic solution. The two are due to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko in Belarus on Wednesday, in what some experts say could be the last realistic attempt to resolve the crisis diplomatically. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And despite wide differences that sorely remain, the anti-austerity Greek prime minister said he was confident that a compromise could be reached on his country's bailout program with his European creditors. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras made this statement from Vienna, where he held talks with the Austrian chancellor, who said the goal must be to keep Athens in the Eurozone. An emergency meeting of Eurozone finance ministers will be held tomorrow, in which Greek officials will present a proposal. And according to a source cited by the New York Times, the detailed compromise will keep about 70% of the current bailout terms. And finally, Japanese dailies have conducted a survey since the public slaying of 2 Japanese Islamic State hostages, and they show that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is enjoying higher approval ratings. A poll by the country's largest daily, Yomiuri Shimbun, showed that support for Abe had grown to 58% from the 53% measured in January. And another poll by Kyodo found that more than 60% of those surveyed approved of the government's handling of the hostage crises. Both dailies had a majority of their respondents agree with Tokyo's plans to continue humanitarian aid to IS-affected regions. 57% in Kyoto's survey said Japan's response to the extremist group should remain non-military in nature.
With the demanding academic and working schedules of many Koreans, getting a decent night's sleep can often be low down on the priority list. What we know now is that this always-on society, Koreans are sleeping less and worse. And for some, it's getting so bad that they require special treatment. Our Kim Ji-yoon tells us more.
Hunched shoulders, dark circles under droopy eyelids, excessive yawning. These are telltale signs of sleep deprivation, a common condition among Koreans. The national sleep average is less than 8 hours, the lowest among OECD member countries. So what's keeping them up at night?
I sleep for 3 to 4 hours a day during the academic semester. I feel dizzy all day, so I try to get fresh air from time to time and try to sleep while commuting.
These days, I sleep like 5 hours because of night culture in Korea. My company has a lot of meetings and conferences, and after that, we go drinking. And so it's really hard to go sleep.
If aroma candles and counting sheep don't work, what can one do to get a good night's rest? Specialized medical centers have popped up in recent years to help, like this clinic in downtown Seoul. Quality shut-eye is important for the brain, says the clinic's doctor. While we're sleeping, the brain helps the body dump out waste, making way for a fresh start the following morning.
Sleep deprivation is truly detrimental to the body. The immune system will start to fail, inducing all sorts of diseases, including arrhythmia, diabetes, and stroke. It's important to ask for help and receive treatment, particularly for those suffering from insomnia for more than 3 months.
Physical and psychological methods are often used to help insomnia patients. Those suffering from sleep apnea may get help from a surgical procedure. For others, a 5 to 8 week program to change cognitive and behavioral patterns could be the ticket to reclaiming those precious sleep hours. Kim Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
We often hear about which cities are the most expensive, cleanest, safest, and so on. But which is the world's most sustainable city? Well, according to a new ranking, it's Frankfurt. But the good news for Korea is that Seoul has been ranked the most sustainable city in Asia. Now, globally, Seoul ranks an impressive 7th, ahead of Hong Kong and Singapore. The Sustainable Cities Index by design consultancy firm Arcadis ranks 50 leading world cities and grades them on their environmental progress, viability as a place to live, and their financial stability. Frankfurt was recognized for its green areas and numerous parks and rivers. As you can see, European cities lead the way on sustainability, with cities in North America not even making the top 10.
Now, there are now fewer than 3 years remaining until the 2018 Winter Olympics kick off in Korea's resort town of Pyeongchang. With the clock ticking, how much of the prep work has been completed and what still needs to be done? Our Connie Lee has more.
For those of you counting down, the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics is just about 3 years away. Come February 9th, 2018, the high-profile competition will kick off in Gangwon-do province, with top athletes aiming for gold. While it still seems a long way off, in actuality, the clock is ticking for Korea, as it must complete all preparations 1 year before the Games open. With budget and environmental issues looming, the question is whether Korea will be ready in time. So far, only around 10% of work has been done on the 6 new facilities being built for the Olympics. And the funds received from sponsors to bankroll construction only make up 15% of the goal of about $730 million needed. Meanwhile, the citizens of Gangwon-do are up in arms about money being wasted, especially the combined $219 million being used on the speed skating rink and an ice hockey rink, which will be dismantled after the 17-day event. As for facilities that are set to be used afterwards, like the 12,000-seater figure skating rink, with no concrete plans for how the venue will be put to use, local residents aren't exactly excited about adding another rink to the 5 they already have. Pyeongchang officials say Korea will be ready in time, but hopes linger that more practical plans will be implemented soon enough. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The Seoul metro area is still blanketed in a layer of snow from yesterday, but it looks like the leftover ice and snow are melting quickly as the bitter cold snap breaks today. But it's dusty out there. The levels of fine dust are higher than usual, so don't forget to wear a protective mask before heading out. Also, the dry weather continues with a dry weather advisory and even a warning in place for most of the eastern parts of the peninsula. So staying hydrated or having some eye drops handy should help you feel a bit more comfortable today. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, Now, the daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 5, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 11, and Daegu and Busan should peak at 11, and Gwangju will top out at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 9 and 7, and Dokdo should top out at 6 later in the day. Now, the temperature readings look promising for the rest of the week and into the weekend under a mostly to partly sunny skies. Well, that's all for the weather, and back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Ji-yoon, for the weather, as always. And that does it for now. Do drive safely.
Yes.
If you're in Seoul, as Ji-yoon reported, it's still pretty icy out there, but not as bad as it was yesterday, I'm led to believe.
It took me about 2 hours to get home from here.
Yeah.
So be careful out there. We'll be back here at the same time tomorrow. Have a great day.